Hi everyone.
Hello, everybody. So,
Having a little disco dance.
yeah, disco dance. So I felt a little bit, I don't know, I felt like I kind of let the side down a little bit when we did our talk at the conference the other day.
Why?
Because, well, I always, I always, I always anticipated that I would get to what I felt was going to be a significant teaching point, which was really more of a metaphor, explaining what we do in relationship. I don't know, I felt like I'd been gabbing on too long, and then we had some Q&A, and then it all came to an abrupt end.
Well,
And
we only had an hour.
And I realised that I didn't get to that metaphor, which was really going to sort of amplify the teaching point that, well, I was trying to make at least. You always do a good job amplifying teaching points. I tend to...
Well, what did you want to say?
I guess I tend to go on a bit. I felt like I went on a bit. Well, so I go, can I say it now? Can I say it now? So anyway, it won't mean anything probably. Well, I'll try and make it mean something. So one of the things that I feel like we do with relationship, one of the things that have really inspired us to work with people that we're using as a metaphor, is that there is this guy called George Monbiot who has come up with this idea to rewild ecosystems, if that's the correct way to frame this, where, for argument's sake, I'm sure a lot of people have seen on YouTube, there is this wonderful documentary about how this very same biologist decides to take a pack of wolves and introduce them back into Yellowstone Park. And they've been extinct there for decades. And I think it's a fairly small pack of wolves, probably only...
I think it's about 12.
They're about 12, yeah. Anyway, so the film starts with this sort of pretty, I wouldn't say it's desolate, but it's certainly, you know, it looks like a big valley that's now kind of turned into marshland. It's not particularly attractive. It's pretty nondescript. But with the introduction of the wolves, the whole ecosystem completely reconfigures itself back into what is essentially its natural pristine state. So it starts off with this very desolate looking valley, and the wolves reappear, and because the wolves reappear, the deer that were once allowed to roam free now will become naturally culled and feel less inclined to hang out in the valley because they don't want to get eaten. And so with the with less presence on the deer front, other creatures start coming back. Well, actually, the flora starts coming back at first because the flora is not getting eaten. The flora comes back, and then the flora turns into shrubs, which shrubs turn into trees, and then the birds come back, and then the birds come back, and the trees come back, beavers come back, and you get the picture, so on and so forth. But what ultimately happens is that the course of the river actually changes. You know, it's basically goes from being a swamp to the banks reconfigure themselves, and the river actually meanders its way through the valley. Anyway, long story short...
Are you going on?
I'm going on, I'm gabbing on. Long story short, we go from this sort of desolate looking valley into this sort of picture postcard, beautiful panoramic landscape of what the valley looks like in its natural state. So for us, as a metaphor, the idea is that if we only understood that our essential natural nature is one of well-being, and the intelligence behind life is always guiding us back towards well-being, or that it's guiding us back, it just is looking for well-being every step of the way, that in relationship we tend to get ourselves into trouble because we get so carried away with this whole tame and control mode that comes out of this need to fulfill whatever standards and expectations we have going on in our mind, that once we get into a low mood or get out of balance in our relationship, we get into tame and control, and managing the sort of the natural landscape of our relationship, which is always going to have its ups and downs. But when we get into that mode, we reap havoc with the sort of relationship ecosystem, as it were. So we saw this movie and thought it was just such a great parallel between what goes on with our essential nature in our relationship, as opposed to what goes on with with an ecosystem, a natural ecosystem. You leave the wolves alone. You leave away the what you perceive to be upset and something that's annoying, maybe irritating, through the lens of a low mood and just be aware that you will always come back into balance, because that's the natural order of things, you'll be good to go. Do you wish to add on to that? Because you'll probably do a much better job of being eloquent about it.
Why would you say that?
Because you're so eloquent.
Is that part of your British need to put yourself down?
Well, no, I'm not being self-deprecating.
Oh.
I like to celebrate your eloquence.
Oh, well, thank you.
Yes.
But you don't need to make yourself sound not eloquent in the process.
Oh, well, okay. I wasn't planning on doing that.
Well, I like what you're saying. I mean, I love what you're saying. I think that we get insecure and we forget that we're going to naturally come back into a good feeling. And when we forget that, we look to try and manage ourselves or our partner to try and feel better. And that tends to create more problems than it's worth. And when we remember that ultimately the feelings are going to move through us and that we don't have to manage ourselves or the person that we love, that actually brings out the best in ourselves and each other, and the relationship landscape tends to look really beautiful then.
Yeah, that sums it up beautifully. It's kind of a little bit hard to take you too seriously at the moment, because it looks like you're wearing a floral hat.
It's not part of my dress code.
Down a bit. It's like we're off to a garden party. Which we are.
We're off to a cream tea.
We are.
One of my favorite things.
High tea.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.